So yeah, of course, it's frustrating because when we try to talk about it, we get shouted down, we get told to be quiet, we get spoken down too as well. So there's hostility there for plenty of women.
Let's try to make this an opportunity to speak.
You're literally a white woman from Australia. You live in a bubble and you're pissed that voices that have been silenced forever finally can be heard.
Who laughs like this? What are you, a Batman villain? Hi, my name is Sydney. Welcome back to hell. And hell it is indeed. Now, for those of you who don't know, a couple months back I flew to New York to participate on a Vice panel about feminism, and that video recently dropped. And if you haven't watched it yet, I will link it in the description, so as per usual, you can suffer in your own time. Fun fact, this is also the reason I was in New York, which led to me being on the flight where I became the meat in the human sandwich. And if you don't know what that situation is all about, I will link some things in the description box as well, because it kind of sounds like you too enjoy suffering. Anyway, if you've been here a while, you will know that I have done many panels and discussions and debates with all sorts of people, including feminists, about feminism. And most of these, most being the operative word, have been overall positive experiences. They're not ones that I look back on and want a memory hole and then bury in the backyard like a serial killer. I hadn't, however, worked with Vice before. So when they reached out and they said, do you want to participate on this panel? I genuinely thought, yep, that sounds like it could be cool. I also get asked a lot, like I mean a lot, why I even bother doing these things with these openly leftist outlets, because there is a chance that they will deceptively edit, there is a chance that they will do things maliciously, and people are right about that. And I will answer that question in this video a little bit later on. But I do want to note that of all of my experiences doing panels and discussions like this was one of the most unhelpful conversations I have ever participated in. Is this how they summon the spirits of oppression? No, just demons? Oh, well, that makes more sense. I say this was unhelpful for so many reasons, and I have so many thoughts about this whole thing, but for the sake of brevity, I'm going to condense my thoughts, so sorry if I don't get to all the things in this video. Regrettably, a ride on this here Hell Gondola can only be so long. Hello, it is me, Sydney from the future. I forgot to add, and I think it's important, that before you once again board my Hell Gondola, although that being said, you are already aboard the Hell Gondola. Let's hear from today's sponsor, Coffee Brand Coffee. So my friend Jeremy from The Quartering started a new coffee company. And as you all well know, he's my pal, my rotten soldier. And so I'd like to support him. So when Jeremy approached me and said,
"Hey Sydney, you want to do an ad for me? You don't have to be a supreme grifter like I am, but the coffee, tea, and cocoa are actually great." Sydney, I didn't actually say this. Why would you even include—
Now I know what you might be thinking. Jeremy didn't even name a tea after you, Sydney, and that's incredibly rude of him. And you might be right. But he did send me his teas, coffees, and mugs, and on a genuine and serious note, I love all of it, especially these little muggies. The coffee is roasted daily, and realistically, you're supporting a creator that doesn't hate your guts. But jokes aside, Jeremy is actually a really good friend of mine, and he's always supported me, so I would love for us to be able to support him back, and you guys get some really great coffees and teas out of it. So click the link in the description, or head over to coffeebrandcoffee.com, use promo code SID for a discount, and enjoy the coffee. I think first and foremost, most of the people who were on this panel were not friendly, putting it mildly. And I don't believe that they were there to exchange ideas or have a good faith conversation. And when I say that, I need you guys to understand that we filmed for maybe 4 or 5 hours on the day, maybe even more. I don't know, it's all blended together at this stage. So the 40+ minutes of Vice content that you see now has been distilled from hours of footage. So the majority of what these people had to say was cut, and they still come out at the end looking unbelievably not nice. So I want you to think about how bad that was on the day. Ugh. So before I even got to New York, I sat down and watched the same panel on feminism that Vice did a couple years ago. And my takeaway from that was everybody on that panel was respectful, they were very polite, and the conversation, even if I didn't agree with some of the things that were being said, was a good conversation overall. And I think, if I'm being honest, that kind of set the tone for my expectations of my panel. You know, I guess I genuinely and maybe stupidly thought, great, this is what Vice is going to try to do again. I was deeply and inherently incorrect. For those of you who follow me on Twitter particularly, you'll know that I can be a bit spicy. And by spicy, I mean the overlord of hell. But in these real life situations, and especially with regard to this panel, I don't go into them expecting a smackdown. I wanted to listen and be respectful and have a conversation. And I say that not expecting to have my mind changed necessarily, but I'm always open and happy to have a discussion. A fruitful discussion. Not whatever the hell this was.
There's a lot of pretty privilege in what you're saying, and that you're white and you present.
Do you think I'm pretty? Thank you.
I think that you present in a way that beauty standards have accepted.
If we're going to talk about pretty privilege, can I just note how Vice did me so dirty with this thumbnail? Like, who signed off on this? If you're gonna use me in a thumbnail, I insist you use a thirst photo, like the internet wants. Only I can post a squish face. The disrespect.
It is like such conservative thinking to say like, I don't understand, explain it to me, versus just saying, I don't understand and let me respect what you are saying.
Drugs are bad.
So people have talked about equity instead, which is instead of sameness, it's fairness. And this would mean that we remove systemic barriers to engage in society.
It's like assuming that we all want to be capitalist babies.
I'm saying that if you don't have the mindset you can even achieve it, you're never going to even try. So it's never...
achieve what? Like, what are we talking about?
Achieve
Because I
a
feel like you
fair
projected
world.
this like
No,
capitalist ideology on every woman.
It's like there are the barriers, right, that we constantly ignore that are very much systemic and microaggressive, right? We see them and experience them every day.
Like what? So I'm thinking male versus female.
But my feminism includes ability, it includes race.
I think women want to sleep around and not have any consequence for it.
Hell yeah, we do.
Yeah, instead of, taking personal accountability and being on birth control, they just want to like do whatever they want.
You say this like it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
It almost sounds like...
I think this is just the face of me being done. I don't know about the rest of you, but I walked away from this panel on the day thinking that the entire state of not only conversation has regressed, but ideology. Because a lot of the views that were being espoused are so far removed from reality, at least from my perspective, that I simply cannot find common ground with these people. Not enough to have a meaningful conversation, and certainly not enough to work towards the same imperatives and initiatives, because what are you doing? I did mention this at the end of the Vice video, but I think this is a good representation of why feminism is dying. It has been cannibalized by leftism, the transgender movement, and I'll add here intersectionalism. I don't know if that's a word. Intersectionality. Which likely explains why feminists on the panel couldn't stick to the topics surrounding feminism, but instead endlessly diverted the conversation towards completely irrelevant points. Most of which, like I said, got cut because if they'd kept them, no one would know what the heck was going on. This was one of my biggest issues with this panel. It didn't feel like a discussion about feminism and female issues. It felt like a struggle session, which is why in the final edit about 14 minutes in, I make these comments.
I don't understand how we're getting so off topic. This is about feminism today, whereas everybody wants to make this about their individual, here are all the multitude of other things that factor into my person. Great, this is about feminism, it's about womanhood. I understand that all of you have your own individual experiences and the other things that feed into you as a person, that's perfectly fine. But this is where intersectionality falls off the planet and loses, I would argue, probably the vast majority of people, including me. I'm not even a feminist. I don't give a crap about feminists arguing amongst themselves about who's the most victimized. But this is annoying to listen to. I honestly I don't understand anything anybody's even trying to get at.
And because, like I mentioned, so much of the original footage was cut, my statement here might seem a little out of place, but for context, at the time, There was so much bickering happening. People were going on irrelevant tangents about unrelated things. Jingle Jangles over here had told us at length about her parents being refugees. She also went on a bizarre rant asking us why we aren't discussing other countries and other countries' issues on this panel. The panelists were fixated on their own personal struggles, intersectionality, and calling attention to their race or disability or whatever. So many sentences were started with, as a, fill the blank. It was not terrific. I'm not a fan. I do have to admit it is a little bit weird being condescended to by a room full of people who think that they're the protagonist in a young adult fiction novel. Victimization. The Jingle Jangle story. It's I just remembered this and I'm gonna add it in. We had to raise our hands about halfway through. Maybe not, maybe earlier than that. We had to raise our hands at some stage because the conversation was so chaotic and because the talking over top of each other was so chaotic that we had to raise our hands to be called upon to speak. So there is that too. So eventually we arrived at the transgender portion of the conversation, because there's always a transgender portion. Can't have feminism without some girl dick. I'm sorry, that is not funny. With that being said, there were 2 trans people on this panel. The one sitting next to me is called Jordan, and while we didn't agree on plenty of things, Jordan was incredibly respectful and very kind. The other trans person is called Eli Ehrlich, who also tweeted that those of us on the right on this panel are fascists. It's a shame all that HRT can't lead to some originality. What's important here is that Eli has a very colored history with some extremely serious allegations littered throughout. And I will say that I did call some of these things out to Eli's face during the panel, but unfortunately they didn't make the final cut. I wonder why. They actually asked me about my comments at the end and I was just like, do you not know who you invite to your own studio? Do you have access to an internet? Yeah, I mean, we might be fascist, but at least we don't—
Dogs like food that's moist and meaty.
I'm gonna have to bleep that out. Now, the majority of the trans conversation did not make it to the final cut, and I don't actually blame them for that because but we did get onto the conversation of biological males playing against women in female sports. And because Pearl was, or still I don't know, because Pearl has been, or potentially still is, a semi-pro athlete, this was a conversation that was particularly sensitive for her, and she did have a lot to say about the matter. I'm sorry that I keep inserting all these random little notes, but I'm remembering things as I'm talking, and there was one particularly humorous moment for me where Eli and I were backing and forthing about the sports thing, and I basically said, you don't play at the same level that Pearl does, you don't play remotely similarly to what Pearl is doing, and Eli tried to say that the high level of archery that Eli participates in is comparable to what Pearl does. Like, what are you talking about? It doesn't make any sense. Oh my goodness. Okay. I'm good. I'm good. I don't know. There's just kind of something intolerable about this social thing that we're doing where we allow non-biological women to shoot down the lived experiences of biological females and then tell us that it's transphobia when we tell them that what they're saying is nonsense. I also feel like there's a joke in here about mansplaining, but I am not going to walk that path because I don't want to get banned. So back to the point, apparently talking about transgender women in female sports was a very sore spot for the feminists on the panel, which is just really amusing in and of itself for a multitude of reasons. But until this point, they had been quite aggressive, and on several occasions I had said to them, there's no need to be this aggressive. Please stop. It's always the smallest ones who are the angriest. Like, what, is the air colder down there? What's going on? So as Pearl was relaying her experiences as a semi-pro athlete, the three horsemen of the apocalypse decided yet again to attack her for what she was saying.
Hold on.
Even if I have years more of training. And so it's like you're taking away the little opportunity that we're given and we all work so hard for, and you're just giving it back to biological guys. It's like this will be the end of women's sports.
Have you tried confidence?
Eli, hold on, Minnie.
Sorry,
Eli.
confidence can't make me bench what a guy benches.
I don't
Confidence can't
understand why
make me
you guys
6'7".
are so hostile. She's sharing her
And confidence
experience
can't make
in
me
a
6'7".
specific
No, she's
field.
sharing
And
trans
I'd have to
misogyny.
go.
No, she's
Yeah.
not. She's a woman who's had
No,
an
it's always not.
experience.
It's
Hold on,
it's
one
always
at a
not-
time.
You guys
We
are
let
so
Pearl
obsessed with your
finish.
own experiences and your own existence, and yet when a woman is sitting here telling you, I feel as though this is unfair and this is compromising and this situation is not helping women, you guys are like, meh, meh, meh. But when you're like, I'm a black person that did this, 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 and this, then it's valid and fair and viable.
They cut the end of my statement here, which is actually something that I think they've done a lot. Initially, I was like, yeah, I think this is fairly good editing, but watching this back several times, I see now that they're cutting what I'm saying mid-sentence, or they're cutting out the bulk of my point, which is generally unhelpful. You can hear the cuts based on where I'm taking a breath. Human being confirmed. What these people did to Pearl, and also me in a clip that I will show you very soon, is something that I notice a lot with progressives. And it's basically where they structure their view of themselves with the labels that they use to describe themselves. Basically, they use these labels to describe the many, many ways that they are victimized by society, or the ways that their life is very challenging. On the flip side, however, if you are somebody who responds in kind and tries to tell them about an experience that you have had, they use those same labels that they don't like, to shoot you down and tell you that your opinion doesn't count or your experience is invalid. And they do that, which you've actually seen in this panel already, by telling you that you're privileged, or that you're white, or that you're pretty, or that you're skinny, or that you're tall, or whatever thing they don't like, whatever thing denotes that your life is easier than theirs. Like I mentioned, I got my own flavor of this when Eli and I were backing and forthing about a series of trans topics, most of which you will not see in the final edit because they have cut it out, which in a way makes it look like I'm responding to something reasonably innocuous, and what the moderator says doesn't fit with the context, but here's the clip anyway.
Agrees that trans women who have been on hormones for between 1 and 3 years, depending on the organization, have the same competitive abilities.
The study that you're referencing had like 7 people participated.
That's misinformation, by the way. I'm referencing several different studies. I'm a trans woman and a researcher.
It's getting personal. I don't want it to be personal.
A lot of us live in this space where we're told that our opinions don't count because they're not the right kind of opinions, and we're constantly shouted over and talked over regardless of what we look like, because there's one group in society that basically takes precedence, and it's frustrating. So yeah, of course, it's frustrating because when we try to talk about it, we get shouted down, we get told to be quiet, we get spoken down too as well. So there's hostility there for plenty of women.
Let's try to make this an opportunity to speak.
You're literally a white woman from Australia. You live in a bubble and you're pissed that voices that have been silenced forever finally can be heard.
That's why they have the voice, because they speak up.
Do you know how to prove a point while someone's making a point? You just did. Congratulations. You guys are gonna love this. I found you a live action remake of this interaction between Jingle Jangles and me.
Forget it!
Shut the fuck up.
It's sort of funny because once this video went live, Hassan Piker, who just doesn't actually make content, just reacts to things, reacted to this video, and around this same time also told me to shut the F up and called me a baby.
And we're constantly shouted over.
Yeah, look. Now she's the victim. Shut the up, you baby. You baby. You crybaby. Me. We're being shouted over. It's like, what? You just got owned and you had no counter. So then you have to turn around and be like, look at us. We're getting shouted. Like, dude, you've been running. You've been running the gamut. Okay. You've been running train this entire time alongside Pearly. And the moment that you get countered out the wazoo, you're like, it's so up. Dumbass.
How do you say stop or stop it in French?
Eli also tweeted about this, saying that I made false claims, was corrected, and then instead of deflecting, I changed the topic. If I was changing the topic, wouldn't that be deflecting? Do you do you know how words work? Like, you also know that this has been edited, so, I mean, like, congratulations that you're so crazy that even the leftist outlet has to edit you back to make you look less crazy? I hate to break it to you, but this is not the own you think it is. And frankly, I'm disappointed. My eyeballs got sore. One of the last things I want to add here is how disappointed I am that it's so socially acceptable to shut us down because we're white. I know some people will disagree with me on that, and that's fine, you're entitled to your opinion, but I personally think it's gross, and I don't think there's an excuse for it. So with that all said, here are some final thoughts about this whole thing. I didn't get to say a lot of what I wanted on the day itself. The bulk of what I did say, I feel like has been edited out, and the things that have been kept, I guess I wish I had articulated better, and that actually goes for the things they did and didn't include. But you know, that's definitely the nature of doing things live and unscripted, particularly in this kind of a setting. Towards the end of filming, I freely admit I was definitely starting to lose it, and there's a couple reasons for that, but two of them, one, because we'd been filming for a long time, and also because I was hungry. So I definitely wish that I had called out some of the things that had been said about the beauty standards, because some of them were just like, duh. And I also wish that I had said something about the health at every size movement, because that's something that you guys know I feel quite strongly about. They called on me at the end there because I wasn't contributing, because I was completely starting to lose it from hunger and just filming for so long and whatnot. And what I ended up saying was just like, not useful. Glad they didn't include it. Let's just not. Overall, this experience taught me how much conversation has regressed. It taught me that conversation is incredibly challenging and will likely get more challenging as things progress. It's sort of funny because 2022 was a fairly pivotal year for me in terms of some of my viewpoints and opinions, which had shifted. And some of those opinions do relate to feminism based on some of the experiences that I've had. So I actually went into this feeling a little bit warmer towards some ideas than I'd ever been before. And I left feeling like everyone is completely insane. Funnily enough, I would actually be very open to having a conversation with any other kind of feminist and basically trying to do this sort of thing, have a panel discussion from both sides of the aisle about why feminism is or isn't needed. And I do think that there are feminists out there who could participate in that, who will not parrot some of the very extreme talking points that we heard on this panel. Lastly, to answer the question that I've got again and again with relation to this, why do I go into the lion's den? Why do I waste my time doing these sorts of things? This is my answer. When events like this go the way that this one did, when a group of people who never hear pushback finally have to answer for their ideas and opinions and they can't do so, so they lash out or they laugh in our faces, people see that. And this is a moment that hopefully will change minds. There are a lot of people who aren't nearly this radical, who aren't nearly as hostile, and seeing this type of thing doesn't warm them to the other side of the aisle. I know it makes them think. I know people who have told me that these kind of situations make them think. It's worth it because this whole thing is about changing minds and changing perspectives. And I will gladly walk into the lion's den if it means giving that a shot. If we never give it a try, then we don't have a right to complain about losing. So there you go. This video has actually turned out to be a lot longer than I thought it would be, so count your blessings. Count your little chickens in the basket that I didn't react to this or, you know, to try to dispel some of the wrong things that were said. I hope that this gives you a little bit of background on what was going on the day and perhaps add some context to the contextless video that we all got to watch. And of course, before I forget, Happy New Year to all of you children of the Hell Gondola. I hope you were safe. I hope you made good decisions. Or if you were like me, you were just in bed by midnight. Now, before I open the floor to all of you, this is just a reminder to check out Jeremy's coffee brand coffee. You won't regret it. Use my link, which will be in the description, because, you know, we love to support friends of the channel. It's always a good time. Now I open the floor to all of you. What do you all think? Did you watch the panel? Did you like the panel? What were your overall takeaways from it? What did you think of some of the things that I said in this video, some of the context that I added? Did you like anything that the feminists had to say? Did you think that any of their points were fair, true, and accurate? And what did you generally think of this whole thing overall? As always, if you liked the video, hit subscribe and the thumbs up button. If you want to leave a comment, feel free to do so, just be respectful about it. And I will see you guys next time.